It was a warm evening, the kind of evening when the city felt alive in every corner. The lights outside the restaurant glowed softly, and people walked in with relaxed smiles, as if they already knew they were about to enjoy something special. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, classy, and welcoming. Soft music played in the background, plates clinked quietly, and the steady hum of conversation filled the room. Among the staff working that evening was a young woman who moved through the space with quiet confidence. She wore a simple apron, her hair tied neatly back, and her expression calm, no matter how busy things got. She didn't try to stand out, nor did she ever raise her voice. Many customers often assumed she was new because she behaved with such humility, but the staff all knew she had been around longer than most. She never seemed bothered by rude comments or long hours, and she always greeted people with a warm smile that made them feel welcome. The restaurant had been steadily filling up when the front doors opened again, letting in a cool breeze and a couple who immediately drew attention. The man walked in first, tall and well-dressed in a tailored suit. He had the quiet look of someone used to being respected. Just a step behind him was his girlfriend, who looked as if she had stepped straight out of a fashion magazine. Everything about her, from her designer dress to her sharp eyes, suggested she expected the world to revolve around her. They were led to a table near the center of the restaurant, a spot where most people tried their best to behave because everyone could see them. The girlfriend didn't like the table from the moment she sat down, complaining that it wasn't bright enough and that she preferred something closer to the window. The man tried to calm her, but she waved him off and signaled the waitress with a sharp flick of her fingers. The waitress approached with her usual gentle expression. She asked if there was anything she could help with. The girlfriend didn't even look at her at first. She just sighed loudly and then pointed at her chair. "This is not the kind of table I sit at," she said. "Move us." The waitress kept her voice even and polite as she explained that all the window tables were full and reserved. She offered to adjust the lighting or bring a small table lamp to make the space brighter. But the girlfriend frowned as if the very idea offended her. The man shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with everyone around him. "I don't care about your excuses," the girlfriend snapped. "Just make it happen." The waitress apologized again and explained that she couldn't move guests who had already been seated, but she would be happy to let them know as soon as a window table opened. The girlfriend leaned back in her chair, letting out a dramatic sigh that made several people nearby turn their heads. "Oh, wonderful," she muttered. "We have to deal with someone who doesn't know how to do her job." The waitress didn't respond. She simply nodded, stepped away, and returned to her other tasks. But the girlfriend wasn't done. Every time the waitress passed by, the girlfriend made small comments, some whispered to her boyfriend, some loud enough for others to hear. Comments about how slow she worked, or how she didn't belong in a place as nice as this. The man looked increasingly embarrassed, but said nothing. When the waitress returned to take their order, she kept her tone steady. She wrote everything down carefully, double-checking to make sure she got every detail right. She never reacted to the girlfriend's cold looks or irritated tone. After she left, the girlfriend picked up her wine glass and twirled it between her fingers, watching the deep red liquid swirl inside. She seemed restless, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against the table. People around them tried not to stare, but it was hard to ignore the rising tension. A few minutes later, the waitress returned with their appetizers. She gently placed the plates down, making sure not to disturb anything on the table. But right as she set the last plate down, the girlfriend leaned forward suddenly. "You know what?" she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the room's calm. "I am tired of this terrible service." The waitress blinked slowly, trying to understand what had gone wrong. Before she could answer, the girlfriend grabbed her half-full glass of wine. For a tiny moment, everything seemed to freeze. The people at nearby tables glanced over, not sure what was about to happen, but sensing it wouldn't be good. Then, without hesitation, the girlfriend lifted the glass and tilted it forward. Red wine spilled over the waitress's apron, splashing onto her shirt and dripping down to the floor. A soft gasp spread through the restaurant, breaking the silence that followed. Even the music seemed to fade for a moment. The waitress stood completely still. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't drop anything or react with anger. She simply looked down at the wine-soaked apron and then back up with a calm expression that surprised everyone who was watching. The girlfriend crossed her arms, as if she had proved some point. "That's for making my evening worse," she said with a smug smile. The man immediately stood up, his face pale. "What are you doing?" he whispered, but the girlfriend brushed him off again. The waitress took a slow breath. She wiped her hands on her apron, which was already ruined. Then she looked at the couple, her voice soft and steady. "I'm sorry that the evening has been difficult for you," she said. "Let me get another staff member to take care of your table while I clean up." Her words were gentle, not sarcastic or angry. She didn't ask why the girlfriend had acted that way. She didn't accuse her of anything. She simply stepped back with quiet dignity. The girlfriend rolled her eyes. "Finally, something useful," she muttered. But the rest of the room didn't see the situation the same way. Several people stared at the girlfriend with disbelief. A couple at a nearby table shook their heads. A family eating dinner looked uncomfortable. A few people even took out their phones, not openly recording but keeping them ready. Just in case things got worse, the man sank back into his chair, rubbing his forehead. He clearly didn't agree with what had just happened, but he also didn't know how to handle the situation without causing a scene. The waitress walked calmly toward the staff area. The other workers rushed to her side, asking if she was all right, and offering towels, but she smiled softly and said she was fine. She wiped off what she could and changed her apron, though the stain on her shirt remained. Despite everything, she didn't let the incident break her focus. She took a moment to breathe, then stepped back out into the restaurant, as if nothing unusual had happened. But something had changed. The atmosphere wasn't the same. Customers who had witnessed the moment whispered among themselves, exchanging looks of sympathy and shock. Even the manager came forward and tried to speak with her, offering to address the situation, but she gently shook her head. "It's all right," she said quietly. "I'll handle it." Her voice carried a certainty that the manager didn't fully understand. There was something different about the way she spoke, something that made it clear she wasn't just trying to avoid trouble. She genuinely seemed unbothered, as if she had already accepted what had happened and decided that no one else needed to worry. Back at the center table, the girlfriend smirked, as if she believed she had taught a lesson. The man looked down at his hands, unable to meet anyone's eyes. People around them fell silent again, unsure what might happen next, but the waitress simply returned to her usual tasks. She didn't stare back. She didn't talk about the incident with anyone. She didn't let her steps falter. She just continued, working steady and calm, as if she knew something that no one else in the room did. The rest of the evening was still ahead, but everyone could feel that the moment they had just witnessed was only the beginning of something bigger, something none of them could yet understand. The restaurant slowly settled back into its usual rhythm, but a quiet tension lingered in the air. Even as new customers walked in, unaware of what had happened, the people who had witnessed the scene couldn't forget it. Their eyes occasionally drifted toward the center table where the couple sat, though they tried not to stare too openly. It was the kind of moment that stayed in the back of everyone's mind, replaying itself in silence. The waitress moved through the restaurant with the same calm energy she always carried. If anyone had walked in right then, they would never guess. She had just stood still while a glass of red wine was poured all over her apron. She even smiled softly at a child sitting near the entrance, handing him an extra napkin he had dropped earlier. Nothing about her behavior suggested she was shaken up, but behind that calm exterior, there was more going on than anyone realized. When she slipped quietly into the back office for a moment, away from the eyes of the customers and staff, the atmosphere shifted. She closed the door gently, leaned against the desk, and took a slow breath. She wasn't upset. She had dealt with worse things in her life. But she was thinking deeply and carefully. The office was simple. A small desk, a shelf of documents, a computer that looked older than it should have been for such a high-end place. Nothing in the room matched the grand style of the restaurant. But that was exactly how she wanted it. She never cared for fancy offices or expensive chairs. She liked things that reminded her of where she started. She walked over to the computer, sat down, and checked the evening's feedback and reports. It was a habit she had developed long ago, one that helped her understand everything happening in the restaurant without ever drawing attention to herself. While she worked, she kept thinking about the incident, not because she felt embarrassed or angry, but because it revealed something important about the couple at the table. The man seemed uncomfortable and ashamed, but he didn't step in. The girlfriend acted with the confidence of someone who believed she would never face consequences. She didn't judge them. She simply observed. Outside the office, the staff continued working. A few of them whispered quietly near the kitchen door, glancing toward the office every few minutes. Even though they respected her request to let her handle things, they still worried. They hated seeing anyone treat her poorly, especially someone who clearly didn't understand her kindness. Back at the center table, the girlfriend scrolled through her phone with an expression of boredom, as if nothing interesting had happened. She didn't seem to notice the sideways glances from nearby diners. The man looked like he wanted to disappear. His shoulders were tense, and he kept adjusting his tie even though it didn't need adjusting. He glanced around the restaurant, noticing how other people looked away right when his eyes met theirs. He sighed quietly, but his girlfriend didn't pay attention. She tapped her nails on the table again, irritated by something on her phone. Meanwhile, the waitress stepped out of her office again, her face composed and gentle as always. She returned to her usual tasks, helping with orders, checking in on guests, and making sure her coworkers were doing well. She never once looked at the couple as if she held any resentment. What no one in the restaurant knew was that she wasn't just a waitress. She wasn't even just a long-time staff member. She was the owner, not just of this restaurant, but of several others across the city. She had built the entire chain from the ground up, starting with a tiny corner cafe she once worked in as a teenager. Her journey had been long, and nothing had been handed to her. She worked every shift imaginable, learned every position in the kitchen, and spent years understanding human behavior, what made people kind, what made them harsh, and how to create a space where people felt respected. Even after becoming a billionaire, she never stopped going undercover in her own restaurants. She believed that the only way to understand the real experience of her customers and staff was to be among them, quietly and unnoticed. It was the best way to see the truth, not the polished truth that showed up when people knew the boss was watching, but the real truth hidden in everyday moments. And today's moment told her a lot. The girlfriend's behavior was extreme, but she had seen people like her before, people who assumed that anyone wearing an apron was beneath them. People who believed kindness was a weakness. People who didn't understand that respect had nothing to do with job titles. She wasn't angry at the woman. She wasn't upset about the wine or the mess or the embarrassment. What mattered to her was how the people around reacted. She had seen the shock on the customers' faces. She had seen the discomfort in the man's eyes. She had watched her staff rush to her side with genuine worry. That was what she cared about. the hearts of the people around her as she stepped back onto the restaurant floor. She noticed a couple at a side table waving her over. They looked concerned, as though they felt responsible for checking if she was all right. When she approached them, they spoke softly. "You handled that with so much grace," the woman said. "I don't think I could have done the same." The waitress smiled gently. "Thank you for your kindness. But it's all right. Everyone has their moments." The man at the table shook his head. "Some moments go too far." She didn't argue, but her eyes held a calm understanding. She didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable or angry on her behalf. Peace mattered more to her than winning any confrontation. She continued her rounds. She checked on families, smiled at regular customers, and helped carry food to a large group celebrating a birthday. Slowly, the restaurant began to feel normal again, but not for everyone. Back at the couple's table, the man finally leaned closer to his girlfriend and whispered something to her. She shrugged him off, still annoyed. He whispered again, more firmly this time. She scowled, rolled her eyes dramatically, and crossed her arms. The man looked defeated. He kept glancing toward the staff area, clearly wishing he could undo everything that had happened. His girlfriend, on the other hand, showed no sign of regret. At one point, the door opened and two older guests walked in. They saw the waitress from across the room and waved warmly at her. She hurried over to greet them. They were regulars, people who adored her and always requested her section. They asked how the evening was going, and she simply smiled, saying it was wonderful. The girlfriend noticed this interaction and raised an eyebrow. She didn't understand why the supposedly low-level waitress seemed to know so many people so well, but she didn't think too deeply about it. Meanwhile, the man watched the way the staff interacted with the waitress. Their respect for her was clear. They didn't treat her like someone ordinary. They treated her like someone important, someone they admired. He began to sense that there was more to her than he had realized. A few minutes later, the manager approached the couple's table nervously. He carried a forced smile and carefully asked if everything was going well. The girlfriend instantly started complaining again about the table, about the lighting, about the service, about the waitress. The manager listened patiently, but his eyes flicked toward the staff area where the waitress stood, quietly helping one of the younger employees tie a new apron. There was something in his eyes that showed he disagreed with every word the girlfriend said, but he remained professional. When he walked away, the man reached for his girlfriend's hand, trying to calm her, but she pulled it back and leaned closer to him. "I don't know why you picked this place," she complained. "The service is embarrassing." The man didn't respond. His eyes drifted toward the waitress again. He watched her laughing softly with one of the cooks, helping him lift a tray that was too heavy for him. She moved with so much grace and patience that he couldn't understand how his girlfriend could look at her and see someone unworthy of kindness. Another hour passed. The restaurant stayed busy, but the energy softened again. The staff worked efficiently, the customers enjoyed their meals, and the music filled the spaces between conversations. But through it all, the waitress watched quietly, not with suspicion, but with understanding. She paid attention to how people treated one another. She watched her staff handle challenges with kindness. She watched the customers show compassion toward her after the incident, and she watched the couple, knowing their evening was far from over. What the girlfriend didn't know was that everything she had done wasn't just witnessed by a waitress. It was witnessed by the owner, someone who never forgot how people made others feel, someone who believed in giving everyone a fair chance, someone who treated every worker as family, and someone who understood that sometimes people needed to be shown the truth, not through anger, but through quiet strength. The moment was coming soon. The truth was going to reveal itself. But for now, she simply continued her work, patient and calm. letting the evening unfold exactly as it needed to. The evening carried on, but anyone paying close attention could sense that something was shifting. The soft music continued to play, plates continued to clink, and new customers kept arriving, yet the energy inside the restaurant felt different. It was as if the air held a quiet expectation, like everyone was waiting for something they couldn't quite name. The waitress stayed busy, moving around the restaurant with her usual calm focus. She checked on tables, helped carry trays, and encouraged the newer staff members with gentle reminders. Even after everything that had happened earlier, she never let her mood slip. Her steady presence helped the rest of the team settle down too. When she smiled, they smiled. When she moved with ease, they followed her lead. But while she worked, she also observed Dot. She watched the couple from a distance, though not in a way that would draw attention. She wasn't angry at them, not even after the girlfriend poured wine on her. Instead, she watched with curiosity, quietly studying the way they interacted. The man seemed lost in his own thoughts, constantly shifting in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The girlfriend, however, seemed more irritated than before, as if nothing could please her. The waitress didn't take it personally. She had met many people over the years, kind ones, rude ones, lonely ones, proud ones. She believed every person had a story, a reason for who they were. That didn't excuse hurtful behavior, but it helped her understand it. Later in the evening, she slipped back into her small office for a moment. It wasn't because she needed a break. It was because she needed to gather information. Not about the girlfriend, but about the restaurant. She wanted to check the night's numbers, see which dishes needed replacing, and make sure the staff schedules were set for the next week. She kept everything organized so smoothly that no one ever guessed how many responsibilities sat quietly on her shoulders. As she clicked through the files on her computer, she paused when she saw a note in the staff log. One of the servers had reported that a customer earlier that week had spoken rudely to another employee. The note explained that the employee had felt shaken, but didn't want to make a big deal of it. She frowned softly. She remembered that day. She remembered seeing the server look upset, but not wanting to push him to talk if he wasn't ready. She made a mental note to check on him after the dinner rushed out. This was one of the many reasons she still worked undercover. People acted differently when they knew the owner was watching. Some were more respectful, some more fake, some more nervous. But when she wore the apron and tied her hair back like any other waitress, she saw the truth, and tonight's truth was revealing itself in small pieces. After a few minutes, she returned to the restaurant floor. One of the younger servers approached her immediately. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked quietly, glancing toward the center table. She smiled gently. "I'm fine. Thank you for checking." He nodded, but he still looked upset. It wasn't fair to him or the rest of the staff that they had to witness such behavior. She placed a comforting hand on his arm. "Focus on your tables," she said softly. "You're doing great." Her reassurance made him relax a little. He returned to his section with renewed confidence, and she continued her rounds. Meanwhile, the couple remained tense. At one point, the man excused himself and stood near the entrance, rubbing his temples. He looked like someone deep in regret, someone who wished he had handled things differently. When he returned to the table, he tried once more to talk to his girlfriend. "Maybe you could apologize," he said gently. She snapped her head toward him with a sharp look. "For what?" "She ruined our night." The man didn't argue, but his expression grew heavy. He looked around the restaurant again, seeing the way people avoided eye contact with their table. He wasn't used to feeling judged. He wasn't used to being the one who caused discomfort. The waitress watched all of this from across the room, not with resentment, but with a thoughtful understanding. She could see the man wasn't proud of the situation. She could also see that the girlfriend didn't realize just how much her behavior revealed about her Dot as the night went on. The restaurant reached its peak rush. A large group came in without a reservation, but the staff worked quickly to rearrange tables. The kitchen grew louder with activity. A few young cooks nearly bumped into each other, but the waitress stepped in calmly to help them stay organized. Dot, at one point, a plate cracked and a few pieces fell to the floor. The staff braced for the girlfriend to comment on the noise, but she was too busy complaining to the man about how slow her food was. The waitress quickly swept up the broken pieces, her movements smooth and practiced. After finishing her shift in the kitchen area, she returned to the main floor. A pair of older guests approached her with grateful smiles. "You always make this place feel warm," one of them said. "Don't let anyone change that." Her smile softened. "Thank you. That means a lot." Their kindness reminded her why she kept working the way she did, why she never let arrogance or rudeness shake her peace. Meanwhile, the girlfriend finally finished her meal and pushed her plate away with an annoyed sigh. "Let's just get the check," she said. "I'm done here." The man hesitated. "Are you sure you don't want to?" "No," she interrupted sharply. "I just want to leave." She waved her hand in the air, expecting someone to come running. The waitress noticed, but didn't rush. Instead, she continued helping another table before making her way to them calmly. When she reached their table, she spoke in the same polite voice she had used since the beginning of the evening. "Is everything all right? Would you like anything else?" The girlfriend huffed. "Just the check. And make it quick." The waitress nodded gently and walked away. Dot, as she did, the man watched her more carefully than before. He saw the way she treated every customer with sincerity. He saw the way other staff members looked at her with admiration. He saw the respect she earned without ever raising her voice or demanding attention. Something inside him shifted. The girlfriend leaned back, scrolling on her phone again, completely unaware of anything happening around her. When the waitress returned with the check, she placed it gently on the table. The man reached for it, but before he could speak, the girlfriend snatched it from his hands. "He'll pay," she said carelessly. The man didn't argue, but he glanced up at the waitress with a quiet apology in his eyes. She responded with a small, understanding smile. As she stepped away, the manager approached her. "Are you sure you don't want me to step in?" He whispered. She shook her head gently. "Not yet." The manager looked confused. "Not yet?" She didn't explain. She simply smiled softly and walked toward the kitchen. There was a reason she didn't react earlier. There was a reason she chose patience instead of confrontation. She wanted to understand the full picture. She wanted to let the evening unfold naturally. She wanted to observe every detail, not out of spite, but out of a desire to respond with fairness. She believed in giving people the opportunity to show who they truly were, whether for better or worse, and the girlfriend had shown enough. The man had also shown something, not strength, but discomfort. Not courage, but awareness. He was not cruel the way his girlfriend was, but he struggled to stand up to her. The waitress didn't feel sorry for him, but she did feel a sense of clarity. She understood now how she needed to approach what came next. When the man came to the register to pay, he paused for a moment. The waitress stood nearby, organizing receipts. He looked at her with hesitation, as if searching for the right words. I'm sorry about earlier," he said quietly. She looked up at him, her expression warm but steady. "Thank you," she said simply. He swallowed hard. "She shouldn't have done that." The waitress nodded gently. "Sometimes people act before they think." He nodded, looking even more ashamed. "I'll talk to her," he said. The waitress didn't say anything more. She just returned to her tasks. The man walked back to the table, but the guilt weighed heavily on him. After he paid, the couple prepared to leave. The girlfriend didn't look at anyone as she walked out. She didn't offer a thank you or a nod to the staff. She simply stepped outside as if the restaurant owed her something. The man followed behind, but before he stepped out, he glanced back at the waitress. One last time, something in his eyes showed he realized the truth that her dignity was worth far more than anything money could buy. When the doors closed behind them, the restaurant seemed to take a collective breath. The staff relaxed. The customers smiled again. The atmosphere softened, but the waitress knew the night wasn't done. The truth still had to come out, and soon. The girlfriend would learn who she had really poured wine on. The evening felt heavier than usual as the restaurant settled into its late-night rhythm. The soft music had lowered, the lights were dimmer, and only a few tables remained occupied. Yet beneath that calm surface, the atmosphere carried a quiet tension that everyone seemed to feel, even if they did not know its reason. The staff worked with extra care, moving around with the same polite energy as always. But there was something different in their eyes, like they were waiting for something to happen. Something that had been building for days. The waitress, still steady on her feet after a long day, kept her focus sharp. She was trained to mask her thoughts, but even she could not ignore the shift happening around her. The CEO and his girlfriend had been at their table for hours, and every moment they stayed seemed to stretch the room tighter. The girlfriend's sharp voice occasionally reached the staff, though the woman did her best to stay composed each time she walked past. The recent events had already left marks on the air, even if no one spoke openly about them. After serving one of the final tables, she stepped back into the kitchen for a moment of breath. She stood near the counter, her hands resting lightly against the cool edge as she took in a slow inhale. She was tired more than tired, but she would never let the exhaustion pull down her spirit. It wasn't her way. She had been through far more difficult days than this. One of the cooks glanced over and gave her a sympathetic look. "You doing okay?" he asked quietly, mindful of the late hour. She nodded. "Just finishing strong," she replied, keeping her tone soft and steady. He gave a small smile and returned to work. But she caught the unspoken thought behind his expression. Everyone admired her strength, even if none of them knew everything about her. She didn't need them to. Her purpose here was simple: work with dignity, move with kindness, and never forget who she truly was beneath the apron. When she stepped back onto the restaurant floor, she noticed movement at the table where the CEO and his girlfriend sat. The CEO looked restless, tapping his fingers against the table in uneven beats. His eyes drifted across the room as if he were waiting for someone. The girlfriend, on the other hand, leaned back in her chair, twirling her half-empty wine glass between her manicured fingers. Her expression carried a mix of boredom and irritation, an attitude that had become painfully familiar. As the waitress approached with a polite smile, the girlfriend lifted her chin sharply. "Finally," she said. "We've been sitting here forever." The waitress kept her posture calm. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" she asked. The girlfriend didn't answer immediately. Instead, she tilted her head in a way that made it clear she was trying to provoke something. She scanned the waitress from head to toe with a slow, dismissive gaze. "You could try being quicker," she muttered. The CEO shifted uncomfortably, glancing away. It was obvious that even he was growing tired of this behavior, though he lacked the courage to confront it. The dynamic between them had changed since the incident with the spilled wine days ago, but the girlfriend wasn't the type to admit fault. Her ego demanded she stay on top, no matter how petty the attempt. "I'll bring your check shortly," the waitress said in the same gentle voice she had used with every customer. She turned to walk away, but the girlfriend suddenly spoke again. "Actually," she said loudly enough for staff at the far end to hear, "I'm not done talking to you." The waitress stopped and faced her again, maintaining her composure. Of course. What do you need? The girlfriend smirked, crossing her arms. You always act like you're above everyone. The perfect little worker. The perfect polite smile. It's annoying. People like you should know their place. A few guests nearby paused mid-conversation, sensing the tension. The CEO's discomfort grew, but he said nothing. The waitress simply stood still, letting the words fall without reacting. She had learned long ago that losing control only gave more power to people who wanted to provoke. I'm sorry you feel that way, she replied, her voice gentle but unwavering. That answer only irritated the girlfriend more. There it is again, she snapped. That fake kindness like you're better than everyone. You think you're someone important? You're just a waitress. I could replace you with a snap of my fingers. She snapped them demonstratively, as if proving her point. The waitress didn't flinch. I'm here to do my job, she said softly. The girlfriend scoffed. Of course you are. Because that's all someone like you can do. Serve people. Clean up after them. Smile on command. She took a slow sip of wine and added, The world is built for people like us, not people like you. The room had fallen quiet now. Even the clinking of dishes from the kitchen slowed. The atmosphere felt fragile, like the surface of glass that could crack if touched too harshly. The CEO rubbed his temples. Can we stop? He murmured under his breath, but the girlfriend ignored him. The waitress folded her hands gently in front of her, a gesture that carried both patience and quiet strength. If you would like the check, I can bring it now, she said. No, the girlfriend said sharply. I want you to admit that you're beneath people like us, that you know your place. The waitress blinked, and for the first time, a flicker of sadness crossed her features, not because she believed any of what was being said, but because she couldn't understand how someone could speak with so much spite. Before she could respond, the door at the entrance opened with a soft chime. The sound drew every eye in the room. A figure stepped inside, calm, confident, and familiar to the staff. The air shifted instantly. The girlfriend leaned back, annoyed. Who's that now? It's so late. But the CEO recognized the person at once. He straightened in his seat. Suddenly alert. The person walked directly toward the waitress with the natural ease of someone who belonged here. The staff straightened subtly as they passed, and even the few guests remaining sensed something important was happening. When the person reached her, the waitress looked up with warmth in her eyes, an expression she rarely showed while working. You're early, she said softly. I wanted to see how things were going tonight, the person replied. The girlfriend raised an eyebrow, confused. Who are you? The CEO swallowed hard, realizing too late that everything was about to change. The person glanced at the girlfriend with calm politeness. I'm the owner of this restaurant, and I believe there's something I need to address. The entire room froze. The girlfriend's smirk faded instantly. Her face drained of confidence, replaced by disbelief. She turned toward the waitress, her mouth slightly open, as though trying to piece together a reality she had never imagined. The waitress stood beside the owner, quiet but steady, watching the girlfriend closely, not with anger, but with the same gentle dignity she had shown all night. The girlfriend stuttered, You're the owner? But she's just... The owner's expression remained composed. She's not just anything. And I think we need to have a conversation about the way you've been speaking to my staff. The room held its breath, and in that moment, for the first time since the evening began, the girlfriend realized she no longer had the power she thought she did. The restaurant felt strangely quiet after the owner's words settled in the air. It wasn't the usual calm that came near closing time. This silence held something heavier: expectation, realization, and the sense that something important had shifted right before everyone's eyes. The girlfriend, who had been so confident only minutes ago, suddenly looked unsure, like someone who had walked into a room expecting applause and instead found a mirror showing her own actions more clearly than she wanted to see. The waitress stood beside the owner, not saying a word, not needing to. Her calm expression made the moment feel even more powerful. She didn't look proud or angry or victorious. She simply looked like someone who had carried herself with dignity long before anyone noticed. And that only made the girlfriend's behavior shine even more harshly under the lights. The owner took a slow breath before speaking again. "I've heard a lot from my staff over the last few days," they said gently. "But tonight, I saw it for myself. No one deserves to be spoken to the way you spoke to her. Not here. Not anywhere." The girlfriend opened her mouth, maybe to defend herself, maybe to deny it. But nothing came out. Her eyes darted between the owner and the waitress, and then to the CEO, as if hoping someone would rescue her from the moment. But the CEO looked down at the table, his fingers pressed to his forehead. He didn't try to stop anything. He didn't step in to save her pride. If anything, he looked like a man who had finally reached the end of pretending. "I was just," the girlfriend began softly. "Being cruel," the owner finished for her. Their voice wasn't raised, but it carried a weight that made the entire room feel it. "And cruelty isn't something we make room for here." The girlfriend's throat tightened. "I didn't mean," the owner shook their head. "Intent doesn't erase behavior. And your behavior tonight was deeply disrespectful. You poured wine on one of my staff members. You insulted her. And you've continued to talk down to her even after she responded with nothing but respect." The girlfriend's face reddened as her gaze flicked to the waitress again. It was the first time she truly saw her, not as someone she thought was beneath her, not as someone she could use to boost her own ego, but as a person who had held her ground without ever lowering herself. After a moment, the owner continued, "I'm going to ask you to leave for the night. You're welcome to return in the future, but only if you're able to treat our staff with kindness." The girlfriend's mouth fell open slightly. "You're kicking me out?" "I'm asking you to respect this place," the owner said. "Tonight, that means stepping away." The CEO stood from his seat slowly. "Come on," he murmured to her. His voice wasn't demanding or angry. It sounded tired, deeply tired, as though he had been waiting for this moment of truth longer than he wanted to admit. The girlfriend hesitated, anger and shame mixing across her face. But she didn't argue. She didn't make a scene. Perhaps she knew she had already created enough of one. She grabbed her purse with trembling hands and walked toward the door, her heels tapping fast and uneven against the floor. The CEO followed behind her, but before stepping out, he stopped and turned toward the waitress. For a moment, he looked like he was searching for something to say in apology, an explanation, something to soften the weight of the past days. But the only thing that came out was a quiet, "I'm sorry." The waitress nodded gently. "I hope things get better for you," she said, and her voice held no bitterness, just sincerity. The CEO gave a faint, grateful nod before leaving the restaurant. When the door closed behind them, the room seemed to exhale all at once. The tension melted. Conversations rose again softly. A few guests exchanged glances, the kind people share when they've just witnessed something they know they'll remember later. The owner turned to the waitress. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though the truth was she felt a mix of relief, exhaustion, and a strange sadness she couldn't quite explain. She had never wanted conflict. She hadn't wanted anyone to be embarrassed or humiliated. She simply wanted to do her job with dignity, the same way she had always done. The owner's eyes softened. "I'm proud of how you handled everything. You've always carried yourself with grace. People notice that more than you think." The waitress lowered her gaze for a moment, feeling warmth rise in her chest. "I just wanted to keep things calm," she said quietly. "I didn't want it to get worse." "And that's exactly why you're so valuable here," the owner replied. "This place is what it is because of people like you." They paused before adding, "Not because of people who think they're above others." One of the cooks peeked out from the kitchen. "Everything okay?" he asked. The owner smiled. "Everything's fine now." Then they looked at the waitress again. "Why don't you take a moment to breathe? I'll finish up with the last tables." She shook her head gently. "I'm okay. I can keep working." But the owner chuckled softly. "I know you can. That's not the question. Go on. Take a moment." So she stepped outside for fresh air. The night was cool, the sky a deep shade of blue with soft hints of silver from the streetlights. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes for a brief second, letting the cold air fill her lungs. The past few days had been a lot. She had stayed calm through each moment, but the weight of everything pressed gently on her now. Yet, instead of frustration, she felt something unexpected gratitude. She was grateful for the owner's support. Grateful for the staff, who always treated her with kindness. Grateful for the strength she never asked for, but always carried. When she walked back inside, she found the owner waiting for her near the counter. They gave her a warm smile. "Ready to close for the night?" She nodded with a soft smile of her own. "Yes." Together they began the closing tasks, stacking menus, wiping tables, dimming lights. The restaurant slowly transformed from a lively space filled with voices to a peaceful room ready to rest out as they worked side by side. The owner spoke quietly. "You know, I wasn't planning on saying anything tonight. I wanted to watch, observe, get a sense of things. But seeing how you handled everything, it reminded me why I chose you to be here." They glanced at her gently. "You bring calm to this place, and that's rare." The waitress felt a shy warmth in her chest again. "Thank you," she said softly. When everything was done, they stood near the entrance, looking out at the empty tables that would be full again the next day. The owner turned to her and said, "No matter how people treat you, good or bad, don't let anyone make you forget your worth. You don't need to prove it. You already live it." She nodded, taking in the words. After locking up, they stepped outside. The owner gave her a gentle good night and headed toward their car. The waitress stood for a moment under the soft glow of the streetlights, feeling the world quieter than before, but in a comforting way. She walked home with steady steps, thinking about the night, the people, the shifts in their faces, the lessons in their actions. And as she reached her door, she realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes the loudest power is the one that doesn't raise its voice. Sometimes dignity is the strongest answer. And sometimes the people who are underestimated the most are the ones who leave the greatest impact. With that thought, she stepped inside, ready for the next day, not because it would be easy, but because she knew she would meet it with the same quiet strength she always carried.